Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Next Gen Planners podcast. My name is Dan, and I'm the head of community experience and marketing here at Next Gen Planners. And today, I'm hugely excited to be joined by Olly Betts from Founders Factory. How are you doing today, Olly?
Great, thanks, Dan. Yeah, looking forward to having a good chat about all things startup world.
Oh, yeah, me too. It should be good. We've got a lot to talk about over the next however long we're going to be chatting for here. And some interesting topics for people who in the audience are in any way, shape, or form entrepreneurial. So we've got plenty to talk about. So for anyone who doesn't know, Olly, he's the fintech sector director, which is I've only just realised the kind of rhyme in the job title there. That's really cool. So he's the fintech sector director at Founders Factory, which is a really, really cool business as well. So to kick us off, Olly, can you just tell us a little bit about what you do on a daily basis and how you found yourself where you are today?
Yeah, sure. I'm really lucky because on a daily basis, I basically spend my time helping amazing founders and entrepreneurs build their businesses and scale their businesses. So I manage investments for Founders Factory in the fintech sector. So that's making investments directly into early stage fintech companies, and then working really closely with those companies to help them go further, faster. So we invest in the business and then we spend 6 months working with them in our accelerator program to help them scale as fast as they possibly can. And as well as investing in those businesses that exist already and are ready for scaling, we also build brand new businesses from scratch in our venture studio. So a typical day as well could involve idea generation, coming up with ways to test product ideas for new businesses, and then also finding the right founders to take those businesses forward. So yeah, I count myself pretty lucky. I spend a lot of time working with amazing entrepreneurs that are far smarter than me and more capable than me, and I'm just there to try and help them be the best they can.
I mean, you're just absolutely surrounded. I mean, we were talking about this before and before we started, weren't we, Olly, about the fact that you're surrounded by entrepreneurs because your sister is an entrepreneur and well, both of your sisters are in a way. But if anyone recognizes the surname, of course, you might think, oh, that sounds like someone in our community. And of course, Olly's sister Gretchen is in the Next Gen Planners community. And then, of course, your wife is an entrepreneur as well.
Yeah, that's
So
right. Yeah.
it's just completely surrounded by entrepreneurs, which isn't a bad thing, of course. It's a really good thing. It sounds really, really good. And I think there's the exciting thing about this kind of stuff is that the real kind of results will come in a few years' time, perhaps when these things start to become large scale and they start to really kick off and things like that. So we're talking about them now as if they're just being founded, but who knows where they could get to in a few years' time, and you get to see that kind of growth as well, which must be really good. So you're experienced in launching and growing companies over the past, I think it's 15 years you've been doing this for now.
Yeah.
But we all know that launching a business, no matter what that business is, it comes from an idea. Now, many people have different places where they have those ideas. A lot of people seem to have them in like the shower or something like that. Some of them happen instantly, and some of them happen over the course of a few years. But if anyone is in the audience now who has an idea and they want to make it into a business, what would you say is the first step to making that idea into an actual business?
It's a great question. You're right. Lots of people have lots of ideas, which is always good. And that's why I always say to people, the idea is actually the easy bit. I think, you don't, and to start a business, you actually don't need an amazing idea. I think a lot of people procrastinate a lot and spend a lot of time on sort of thinking they don't have an invention as an idea. They don't think it's that radical. Google, I think, was the 20th internet search engine when that was launched. So yeah, what you actually need, in my experience, is great execution. So good idea with great execution. So really the first thing you need to do when you have an idea is get on with it, basically, and validate whether there's a business that can be formed out of that idea. So for me, a startup's pretty simple. It's a series of experiments you run to test hypotheses that you've got that you need to be true for your idea to be a business. And so yeah, the first thing I say to people who say, I've got this great idea, like, how do I build a business, is you need to launch your product. So your idea is quite possibly a product, even if that's a service like financial planning. It's still a product that you're offering. It solves a problem. got to launch that product like now. And quite a few of the people I speak to who sort of are thinking about starting businesses are actually taking too long to launch a product. And so what I always say is you should be quite embarrassed, if not very embarrassed, about version 1 of what you launch. And if you're not, and if you're really proud of what you've launched, then you took too long tinkering with it and not enough time testing it, and you were too slow to give it to people to try out. So yeah, how to get from idea to business, to find what experiments you're going to do and do them, and launch a product before you're ready.
I thought you were going to go down the Shirley Buff route there of saying just do it, but no,
it's a bit of that. It's a bit of that.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of what I spend time with, even experienced founders actually who have launched multiple businesses in my day job in the accelerator, is I probably do bore them a bit of like, how can we do this faster?
Yeah.
So one way of doing that is make the experiment you think you need to do, like building a team and launching this business on television. You can often break that down into loads smaller steps. And so, I do spend my time saying, just do it. Like, why haven't we already launched a product? What are we doing? That kind of question.
That is good. It's kind of like a bit of an accountability as well, isn't it? As holding people to the things that they say they're going to do. I think something really interesting what you said was that, especially about Google being the 20th search engine and everything like that. It's this idea that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to do something better than somebody else does it. You don't even need to do something better than somebody else does it. You can do exactly the same as they do it, but just another option for them. And I think what we forget about because there's this term, isn't there, USP, unique service proposition. The middle in that is service. So if you can offer something which is unique in the way that you do it, which is, you said execute, didn't you? That means you can do exactly the same as what somebody else does, but if you do it better, or you do it, in a different way to them, that offers a different option to someone else.
I do believe that. I think being an inventor is a totally different skill set to being an entrepreneur. Now, there's amazing inventors that are amazing entrepreneurs, like James Dyson's probably one that comes to mind. But actually, I mean, there's not many new ideas left. So don't spend too long worrying and checking no one else has had the idea. Like I say, run a test, validate. And as you say, actually, a lot of what we look for in tech startups actually is things that are 10 times. So 10 times better, 10 times faster, appealing to 10 times more customers, but that's been done before.
Yeah. So working with these people over the years and being surrounded by entrepreneurs all the bloody time, what would you say is the kind of common personal attribute, I guess, of all of these people who've launched these businesses, who have been entrepreneurs? What is the common attribute amongst them that they have?
Yeah, I think there's a few. Probably the number one we kind of touched on a little bit about, like, where do you get an idea from? But I think the most important attribute that brilliant entrepreneurs that I meet have in common is being really passionate about the problem they're solving. So, an idea normally is a problem, starts with a problem that you want to solve. Brilliant entrepreneurs are really passionate about that problem. They've either experienced it themselves, quite commonly actually, so they can not just talk well about it and convince other people it's a problem, but they've got evidence it is a problem, and they know how acute that problem is, and they've got ideas for how to solve the problem. So you've got to be passionate about it, not least because it's really hard building a business. And so when it gets really hard and you're doubting yourself and other people are doubting you, it's that passion for solving the problem that you started out to solve that's going to get you through that, nothing else. So that's really important. I think that there's some other attributes that I look for when I'm looking for founders to bring into new businesses to build with me, or when I'm investing in people, that we look for at Founders Factory in all our companies actually, which is doers, not talkers. We talked about execution already, but sort of it is a skill of entrepreneurs, especially in tech businesses, to be able to sell a vision and bring investors in and new team members on the journey with them. But actually the best are the ones that do it before they sort of work out how to talk about it. They get on with it. They run their tests like we talked about. Yeah. I think then another one is curiosity. So I think anyone entrepreneurial, even entrepreneurs, people, I hate that phrase, but people innovating internally in big companies are normally the curious people. So people with a superhuman curiosity. They just really want to understand how things work, why things aren't working. And the brilliant entrepreneurs spend or invest that curiosity in their sort of target customers. So back to solving a problem, they spend time really getting under the skin of their target customers, saying, why is this a problem for you? How often do you experience that problem? How would you solve it yourself? What do you do to hack the system to solve this problem? So yeah, I'll bring it back to the start. You've got to be passionate about the problem.
Yeah, I was going to bring it back to passionate as well, because like, if you're trying to, because launching a business, you have to sell stuff to people. That's just the way it is. That's the whole thing of being in business, is you're selling a service or a product to people. And if you can't sell it to yourself, I always think, if you go and sell it to yourself, how on earth are you going to sell it to other people? And it's really hard actually to sell a product where you don't believe in it. Like, say for instance, if you're in a business and your company's launching a product, or has a product that you don't agree with, it's really hard to then sell it if you don't believe in it. And it works exactly the same with your own business. If you don't believe in it, how on earth are you going to sell it to anyone else? Okay, good. Yeah, I agree with that. This is a huge question, the next one, which will probably take the least amount of time to answer. But what one tip would you give to someone who is launching their financial planning business today, right now, who's launching it today? What one tip would you give them?
So that's quite a difficult question, isn't it? I'm going to use a tip that I've shared recently with a few people, which is start the business before you've left what you're doing now. So it comes back to a few sort of things I've already mentioned around launching your product before you're ready, testing something. It's all about testing. Mm-hmm. I sort of meet too many people who kind of say, well, I'm going to leave my job, or I'm going to leave the corporate world and start a business. And then you say, well, what's the business? And it's kind of, well, I haven't worked it out yet. Or it's sort of, even when we're sort of talking about, someone who's, launching their business, it kind of implies they've kind of stopped doing what they were doing and started the new thing. I mean, I'm a firm believer in, by the way, carefully and sensibly, and there's lots probably of employers listening, I'm not advocating people using all the time that they're paid by their employers to do their job, but it's just it's the side hustle, right? Every great entrepreneur has a side hustle or puts their energy into a side hustle. That's where the best businesses start. The best founders that I've worked with who have built massive businesses sort of started them, again, it's back to passion, started them as a bit of a side project or a side hustle. And it was at the point that they'd done enough testing and run enough experiments to know this was the big thing, that they sort of jumped out from what they're doing. It might be a bit counterintuitive because the question was, what's the tip for someone who's launched? But so it might be too late for those people. But I'd say, don't leave security until you've run your tests.
I think it's a good tip, because as you mentioned, building a business is hard, and it is just completely tested. And I think we forget, don't we, that when you're launching a business by yourself, often you completely rely on that income to live. And if you launch it and then find that you're actually not as passionate about it as you thought, or something like that, then that is a big problem, because you could have been used to a very good income in your previous job, and then you've just left that for something that doesn't work and you're not passionate about.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that a lot of, back to kind of ideas, a lot of businesses, actually, one of the big challenges for any startup, whether it's in sort of more core services like financial planning or fully sort of tech automation, a lot of what they struggle with is lasting long enough, living for long enough for their idea to be validated enough, or actually to be at the right time. Kind of timing of markets always interesting. So actually, one of the problems, if you kind of jump out of a secure position and then put everything on the line without doing enough validation, is you shorten the amount of time you've got to prove your business. Whereas if you can do more experiments whilst you're still generating income from another source, and hopefully a secure one, then you actually just give yourself longer, which is huge. I mean, that is if it's a lesson I've learned from kind of starting businesses, it's just you always need longer than you think to either get the first customer, secure the first partnership, generate the first revenue. Yeah, you always want twice as long as your business plan. And so one way to do that is, stay where you are until you're really ready to go.
Yeah. Oh, getting that first customer does feel good though. I just remembered when we had our that just feel really good. So that should serve as inspiration to someone. It does feel very, very good when you get your first customer. Someone's put their trust in you. There's nothing more that makes you believe in yourself more when someone does put their trust in you to do that kind of stuff. So it's good. Okay, so we'll stick on the entrepreneurial stuff just for another couple of questions. One of the terms that gets thrown around a lot, and especially in entrepreneur books and business books and things like that, that I know our audience reads a lot, is this term entrepreneurial mindset. So if you were to define that, how would you do so?
For me, and this does come from a bit of a book, but or other studies, is I think the entrepreneurial mindset's very much aligned to the growth mindset. So there's there's kind of two different mindsets. I don't even know what the other one is because I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. But like growth mindset is, people who are constantly learning, really comfortable with failure. Failure is, people who see failure as a lesson learned to take forward to get better. And as mentioned earlier, really for me, kind of being passionate about a problem by definition, you're a problem solver. It's that. Okay, a few things I've said already. If you read the definition of growth mindset, it's about running tests and experiments. Yeah, it's kind of that pursuit of always improving. So I think that's the mindset of someone entrepreneurial and of a founder and of someone who wants to build their own business. They're constantly, experimenting and wanting to get better. And I think if you look at, I won't name any because there's a risk that people don't see them as kind of inspirational kind of entrepreneurs or leaders, or they have so much success they lose their way slightly. But like most of those people who have really built businesses that have had positive impact and positive change continue to have a growth mindset. They continue to innovate, create new things, try to achieve the next goal, take what they've learned and give back through mentoring, charity, investing in other businesses, or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think that's the one thing that is the mindset for me.
And that kind of brings us on nicely to the next question, which is surrounded like things like coaching and mentoring and things like that. And we'll also, I think we'll put funding in there as well. Because speaking from in a terms of financial planning businesses here, which I know that you might have rushed across them at some point in your life, but I know they're not your main thing. But it's what their financial planning businesses, especially if you want to go what's called directly authorized in the UK, you do need a hefty amount of it's called capital adequacy at the start in order to actually get going. And a lot of people don't just have however much it is sitting around in order to get that going. So they do need to look for funding. But then there's also the other side of coaching as well, which is, like you do, for instance, on a daily basis. Sometimes you need that second opinion. Sometimes you need that accountability. Sometimes you just need someone there to hold your hand through this kind of stuff. So I guess for both of those things, funding and coaching, where are some good places to look for this kind of stuff? And again, it's not just in financial planning, but all businesses really. Where are good places to start to look for this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think the answer to funding might be different. Like in the kind of financial planning sector to maybe the sector in kind of tech that I'm more focused on, but still I think there's a lot in common. On coaching, I think it's the same for me across all sectors, all businesses. I think coaching is really interesting. Most people know someone who's launched or run a business, parents, family, friends, etc. And I think if you haven't ever asked someone to kind of for advice or to spend a bit of time kind of feeding back on ideas or sharing their experiences, people love doing it generally. Like it's very rare you'll find someone who doesn't want to be helpful, especially if there's someone that you look up to or someone that you're inspired by. And that's because it's really rewarding to be a coach. To anyone who is a coach or a mentor to people, it's a really rewarding kind of process for the most part. And so even if it's just teaching you something about how to kind of interact with different people, So I think for me, where you go to coaching is kind of basically anyone. And then you'll be surprised if you ask people kind of how helpful people will be. And so, yeah, I would tend to go to people that you sort of, I wish I knew what that person did, how they got started or how they solved this problem. Then I just encourage people to go and ask them. Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. And then you sometimes find by that more informal approach, you really do get into the real things about that you want to learn, which is normally less about process and tactical frameworks and things, strategic things. It's about, well, how did you cope and how hard is it? And and what did you do when it was not working so well? So yeah, I think people within your network, and like I say, you'll be surprised how helpful people will be. I think funding is different actually. And so I'll come back to financial planning. What was coming straight into my mind when you asked about funding is a bit like when I said, don't leave your job till you've got your business sort of started already. It was actually kind of, I think too many people have a start assumption that they need to sort of raise money or funding to get started. So back to kind of launching as soon as you possibly can with a product you're not really sure you should launch. I think with most businesses, you can find a way to launch. And by launch, I don't mean the business how you expect it to pan out, but the first experiment. You can do that normally with your own money or bootstrapping, or you'd have to spend any money. You just sort of have to not get paid for a bit or make some compromises there. So I think that is important, mainly because funding adds just layers of complexity. Extra, you've got to manage investors, you've got extra pressure, you might need to give up some of your company in exchange. I mean, even figuring out how much and going through that dilemma is hard enough. So really you want to have done some experiments, as I'm calling them, before you get to that stage. I think so I would encourage people to spend as much time figuring out how they can launch a business without ever raising any money than where to get money from. And if anyone wants a useful thing to kind of look at, like James Dyson's story is amazing. Now, I'm not advocating going to get lots of credit card debt like he did, but he still owns 100% of his company, which is mind-boggling for lots of reasons. But if you can find any previous, I think there's a podcast I could dig out and send the link to where he talks about the start of Dyson, but he basically, that's what he did. He figured out for a different reason, didn't want to ever give up any of his business. So he had to control because he had a bad experience before. But he just found ways to run these experiments and validate the business without raising money. I think for financial planning, I understand that could be different. I've launched some businesses in FCA regulated environments previously. And yes, there's certain things and capital adequacy you need. I would still encourage people to think about how they can validate that business pre-FCA authorization. So another way in the world we're really focused on today of thinking about it is less about funding and frankly more about just the cost of being regulated. I don't need to tell people the cost of being regulated. It's good to protect consumers and at scale. Absolute advocate of that, but it's a very good way to slow down innovation. And so find a way to validate what needs, the things that need to be true for your business to be a hugely successful financial planning business without being regulated. Can you deliver enabling technology to start with? Can you partner with an existing authorized firm to validate things? Can you just do a small part of their process? I spent a lot of time actually at Founders Factory because we build so many fintechs, basically figuring out how far we can go without being regulated. And that's not how far we can go in terms of managing customers and sort of in any way bending the regulatory rules. It's how far can we go to test things where we're very clearly nowhere near being needing to be authorized. So yeah, I think that's important. And then if all of that's done and then you're ready to raise money and it's for the right reasons, and you've put it off as long as you can, then actually kind of probably a different podcast on where to get money from, but sort of if you're looking for kind of growth equity and willing to give some of your company up, then a good place to start typically would be angel investors, possibly locally. I would actually say start local where you can, because actually there's normally angel networks from high net worth individuals pretty much wherever you are, and increasingly regionally. And there's also different options from local government support. And another great one often is grants, innovation grants. You don't have to give any of your business up. You don't have to have any repayments. It's effectively grant money, free money for brilliant innovation. And there's increasingly, again, especially for very early stage businesses, those options. So start local, and again, back to coaching. Ask the last person who started a business, kind of, where did they get funding from, if they did.
Well, that was a very, very comprehensive answer. That covered everything.
You asked a very comprehensive question.
Yeah, no, I completely set it up, but it was fantastic. I think there's a few things in there. So, the fact that, so if we stick in financial planning business, there's a lot of surrogate, that we call them surrogate businesses out there, who effectively allow you to be your own business inside their business and not have to have all the capital adequacy requirements and things like that until you're ready to go out there and you're ready to go out and start your own business. There's loads of them out there which are existing. And then, of course, in financial planning, that you can also go appointed representative as well, which means basically you're part of a network, which again eradicates the need to have capital adequacy requirements and things like that. So there's always ways to do it. I think a lot of people struggle with them kind of things because it never feels like it's truly yours. So I think people often do strive to become directly authorized at some point. But like you said, it's a journey, isn't it? It's you're not going to get everything you want from day one. So therefore, you should work towards these things and continue to experiment and do things, rather than just sitting and thinking, "Oh, I'm never going to be able to do that because I can't afford it." Okay, brilliant. Okay, so let's move away from from the entrepreneurial world, kind of, and stick with what you're doing at the moment. So at the moment, you're working on a project which is called, and correct me if I'm wrong, version 40.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I'm very, very interested to see what this is, because you say that, and you've quoted this as saying that financial services aren't fair, and you're there to fix that by putting the customer first forever. So I would agree. I think I would agree with you on certain parts of that. But can you tell us about this new venture and what it is that you're actually doing there?
Yeah. So I set up version 40 as I sold my previous startup. Because I felt, and I'd been part of the problem, if you like, that actually I don't think financial services has quite done enough to put customers first with existing financial products, and even with fantastic kind of innovation and disruptive sort of technology and propositions that have come into the market. I still don't think they've quite done enough to put the customer first. And so a lot of financial products, what we've seen, without getting too kind of strategic about it, is lots of disruption in kind of distribution, the way people access products, pricing of products, but they're actually not in the underlying financial products. Mortgage to buy a home, loan to buy something you can't afford right now, and a credit card, or let's forget credit cards, buy now, pay later for convenience at checkout. Right? Those things, I like buy now, pay later. Everyone's getting very excited about it as an innovation, but as a financial products existed since like the 1800s. So it's kind of not anything new. But actually, most financial products remain really hard to understand. So for me, the things that aren't fair is they're very difficult to understand and they're very difficult to access for a lot of people. They're ultimately kind of designed for the infamous 1%. Right? Now, that's partly because of economically how most financial services and financial products work. They're profitable from that segment, which is a small segment. And so a lot of the effort into how they're created and who they're built for aren't for the majority, they're for the minority of people. And so that's why, it doesn't kind of work, and it's not focused on the customer enough. And I don't think that needs to be the case. I think new technologies, the ability to innovate with kind of underlying technical infrastructure and then data and the way consumers are interacting now, I think there's opportunities to kind of reimagine the economics such that you can build products that are more focused on the majority of people. And so that's kind of the thesis behind version 40. But at the moment, in true to practice what I preach, it's just me with some ideas at the moment. So really what version 40 is a sort of a kind of thesis, and then a set of principles that I'm committed to bringing to the innovations I work on. And so kind of promise to myself, I guess, that I hold myself accountable to is, all the startups that I work with and spend my time on will be ones that are trying to make financial services work more for the customer. It might become something bigger in the future, but at the moment it's it's me with some ideas and principles.
It's very exciting. I like how you're being quite coy about it as well. Okay, I think a lot of that makes sense actually in there. And you're actually the founder of OpenWorks, and I say that right, but if anyone's going to Google that, there's an O missing in works, so it's OpenWorks,
That's right.
which is which is a technology that makes open banking work, obviously. Um, and a few years ago, a lot of people were very, very excited about open banking, especially when it came in. I think was it 2019, 2018? I can't remember when it was when it came in. And I can remember I was I thought, oh my God, this is going to change the world. It's going to change everyone's lives. And it has the potential to, but I'm sure you would agree that it is really still to catch on amongst the majority of the public. And I think a lot of financial planners aren't using it either. But what do you think that financial planners can do to introduce this kind of open banking and APIs and all that kind of stuff to their clients?
Yeah, it's a great question. OpenWorks, my business before was focused on making open banking easier to build into product, to turn into solutions to solve problems. Our customers actually at the time were software developers. So our thesis, if you like, was the ability to easily exchange very detailed information financially. So people spending information essentially and move money more easily between accounts. Sounds like it can be pretty transformational, but it needs to be much easier to work with and build products more cost effectively so that startups can build products and solve the problems that exist. And so that was what OpenWorks did. We were very excited about, I remain very excited about open banking. So there's about 5 million consumers in the UK that are regular users of open banking now. So you're right, that's still a minority and by no means kind of into mass adoption. I think the challenge has been that actually the adoption where it has come is where open banking is very much just embedded into an existing customer experience. And so effectively the way I think about it is you need new technology to kind of sit where people already hang out and where they already do things they want to do in their everyday lives. So the notion that the way to get open banking used by everyone in the UK was going to be sort of creating this amazing new product that no one had seen before is wrong, basically. Yeah. Basically, the way you get mass adoption is you use that new technology to remove steps. Everyone wants things faster, more convenient, and more personalized. And open banking can do all of those things. And it's kind of starting to. So I think for financial planners, an interesting observation would be that maybe you as financial planners shouldn't do anything about trying to get open banking to be adopted. What you should do is look for other technology companies or start technology companies which are going to create products that use open banking as an enabler for the financial planning experience to be easier. And so some fairly, I think, obvious maybe opportunities would be things like when a financial planner onboards me to their company or as a customer or a client, I seem to remember I had to fill in loads of paperwork, and some of it involved stuff about my income and some of it involves stuff about my spending. Well, I could just press a button and you can have it. That's what open banking enables. It is secure, it works at scale. So there's one area, that would be hugely more convenient, especially for, I assume, a target audience of financial planners, which is younger, more technology enabled and in more of a hurry. And so that would help. I think there's a huge opportunity, but as financial planners, you shouldn't necessarily be building the technology to solve this around, I'll use acronyms because I assume I'm in safe hands, KYC, AML, ID checking, credentials checking. A lot of that information that you need sits within the bank and the bank account and can be can be passported instantly and very much more securely than it is done with paperwork or with other sort of back-end systems today. And then the third would be payments, which I actually think the payment capability of open banking that's been talked about a little bit less is where the mass adoption will come. So the ability to instantly move money from account to account. And so without boring people on payments infrastructure, there's not a money moving from your account to the person you want to pay goes through many more steps than you would want it to, or probably thought it did. And open banking enables that to be quite direct, instantly direct. I could send you down money right now and it would go absolutely directly from my bank account to your bank account. And that actually helps not just with speed and convenience for customers, but fraud, reconciliation, which I'm sure is fun for financial planners. As anyone running a business, like reconciling invoices and money movements and transfers, I'm sure is a bit of an overhead. And so there's just these they might feel like process efficiencies, but could be quite transformational. Back to the previous point, I'm not sure financial planners should be, I don't think financial planners should be going to customers saying you should really use open banking. I think financial planners should be looking for those technology solutions that enable you to say, I've got this new way of you sending your ID to me or you evidencing affordability. I mean, the interesting thing on why I'm so bullish on open banking getting adopted massively is HMRC are now offering account-to-account payments to pay your self-assessment return. And so I'll be paying my self-assessment return by an open banking mechanism when I pay it in a few months' time, if I get my act together. And it'll be one click and it will go account to account, and I won't even have to put the reference number on to that silly payment that I set up as a separate payment to go to a HMRC clearing account. It will go directly account to account with all of the identifying information on it, so they know it's from me. I mean, that's pretty huge. So yeah, it's going to start happening pretty quickly. For financial planners, I think there's loads of opportunity.
Yeah, that's weird actually, isn't it? The people who like being paid the most, i.e. HMRC, have made it the most hardest way to actually pay them. Like paying self-assessment is ridiculous. Like the first time I paid mine, I was like, is this actually for real? Am I sending this to some dodgy account in like the Canary Islands, the Cayman Islands or something here? But yeah, okay. I think there's some brilliant companies out there as well. Like one of them that comes to mind, I don't know if you've heard of this one, it's called Visible Capital. And those guys are based in Edinburgh, and they're really working hard on this kind of thing and making sure that it's a streamlined process for the clients. And like you said, they're not having to put income and expenditure and all that kind of stuff in. I think they actually, I don't want to say that they do and then they don't, but I've heard AML mentioned with them guys. I don't know if they actually do that as well. But yeah, there's some great people out there doing great things as well, which is good. Okay, so you're obviously very passionate about technology and in finance and using that to help clients, and an enormous problem, and I can't even use adjectives to describe how big this problem is in financial planning at the moment, is that the providers that we're using, which again, you could have another conversation for an hour about the providers that we're using and how we should have better providers in financial planning, but they're all using ancient technology that was designed in the 1990s to deal with a short-term problem, which then never got solved, and they've just been using it for all these years, and it wastes the financial planner's time, it wastes the client's time. Say, for instance, on some platforms, if you want to do something, you still have to fill in 3 forms by paper and send them in by post with signatures on to make sure that this kind of stuff, like that, should not happen in today's world, in my opinion anyways. I think in your opinion as well. But how long do you think it will be before all of this kind of stuff is forced to change? Like, how long do you think it will be before either the market forces it to change, regulation forces it to change, legislation forces it to change? What do you think? How long do you think it will be?
Never, if we wait for regulation to change it.
Yeah,
there's been plenty of efforts to kind of do that, right? So yeah, it's how well, there's a few interesting things in there. So I think the disruption or the change has got to come from within. So it's, I'm fairly confident the providers of the technology that's being used are making some nice margins. So they're probably quite happy, zero incentive to innovate. Sure. Probably quite comfortable that customers will find it hard to leave their platform and they're making nice money. So it's not going to come from upgrades. from incumbents. So it's going to come from people who understand the industry from within the industry, again, kind of jumping out and solving the problem. I think one of the really fascinating questions in financial planning, and I'm not an expert in the market, but I see similarities with others, is, you know, which party does it suit to push for automation? So as a consumer, I'd probably want some more convenience financial planning. But as the financial planners, kind of who are the bold financial planning organizations or individuals who are going to really drive for automation and basically trade margin for scale? And that's kind of what's fascinating to me about your market, is that's why the incumbents won't ever do it. Regulators, forget that. It's sort of, but yeah, who are the people who are going to say there's a better way to do this? And I believe either I'll get scale, or actually I should have said adjacent revenues to top up your margin to where it is today. It's a fascinating market because it's kind of high touch, high margin. So if you remove the touch and automate, then the margin comes down. So you need to find another way to make it work. But yeah, it's going to come with, I back it to come within pretty quickly, because we feel like it's one of the areas of financial services that, if it's not from within, generalist tech startup people will start saying, hold on, we've done so much in consumer and retail and kind of general banking. We've kind of changed that, upgraded it multiple times. I'm doing quite a lot of work on pensions at the moment. It's probably why I'm a bit excited about it. It's kind of like, we could probably do, we don't know pensions brilliantly, but I'm pretty sure we could work out how to make this 20 times better. So
yeah, that is really good point, actually. Like the fact that, like you said, we've sorted all this other stuff out that realistically has a material impact today, but doesn't materially impact you in the future. Whereas pensions are probably the best thing that you'll have to think about for the future, and the biggest tool that you'll have later in life. And yeah, we haven't sorted that out yet. And it's just like, it's crazy. So I'm very, very optimistic, actually, after asking you that question, what you just said there. In a way, I'm still a bit doom and gloom about it, considering the fact that, oh, it's all hopeless, and why would they ever change this if they're getting paid well and all that kind of stuff. So, okay, so just a few questions left because I'm aware of the time. But the last kind of serious question I have for you was that you want to make financial services fair for everyone, but a lot of people in the UK are still massively illiterate when it comes to personal finances. You only learn what a mortgage is when you have to get one. You only learn what a pension is when it starts getting taken out of your account every month. And even then, you still don't really know what it is. You just put money into it. Some people don't. You only know what an ISA is when you when you have some money, and all of these things. And the problem is that we're not getting taught this kind of stuff. Well, we are getting taught this kind of stuff in schools now, but not to the extent that we would like it to. And it's a lack of financial education. Now, you're very passionate about technology, but how do you think that we can use technology as a tool to educate people about their finances?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting area. Yeah, I think technology can be used to help educate people. I think, as I mentioned before, around kind of how we make things fair, I think it's about simplification. So I also think the products themselves need to be changed so that you don't have to be an expert to kind of understand them. I think that's just as important, because I think there is a lack of education. We need to do more there. But when I was working on another project, I was amazed. There's something like 1 in 5 people have arithmophobia, which is a genuine fear of numbers. Like, not like I don't like maths. This is a genuine fear of numbers. So they kind of actually cannot even consume information on a page with numbers on because they're too scared. That's like not going to be solved through education. That's going to be solved through how do we actually just, how do we just sort of visualize in a different way for different people kind of how compound interest works.
Yeah,
that's one that fascinates me. You know, people don't understand compound interest, so they don't save money. You mentioned pensions. People don't invest enough in their pensions because they don't understand compound interest and kind of compounding generally. And so, but that's because compounding is normally, most people, and I'd probably do it as well, if I sat down to talk to someone about compounding, I'd probably write down a formula. So that's not really going to help someone who probably doesn't understand compounding because they don't really understand formulas, and that might be a lack of education, or might just be they're not wired that way. I think we really need to, like, back to kind of put the customer first. We really need to work through some pretty hard challenges on how we make things easier. Because I think the other thing that I'm fascinated by is a business I'm working with at the moment who are looking at helping people save money, but they're not doing it by getting people to change their behavior. They're basically automating rewards that people can get for spending. And so it's products like that and approaches like that I get really excited about, and I think can make things more accessible, because this business is effectively saying, we know it's going to be really hard to stop spending as much money because there's certain things you have to spend money on. So how about we start saving you money by making sure you get all the rewards you can get when you do spend. And if you spend in these places, then you can actually effectively save. So I think there's a lot of, education is going to have to be one thing, but I think there's also just that simplification in different ways of turning things around a little bit to make them just more consumable, maybe I dare say even a bit more fun for people. Yeah. I mean, I bet most of the reason people don't learn about financial services is ultimately it's not much fun.
Yeah, it is quite dull, to be fair. Yeah. I mean, like you said, you can't really blame financial planners for that. It's the products that are the dull things. Financial planners are some of the most exciting, interesting people I've ever met in my life. But the stuff that they talk about on a daily basis is not. Well, to some people it is. To some paraplanners and stuff, it definitely is. Okay, so come to the end now. We usually ask this question based around financial planning, but for you, I've changed the wording a little bit. So, what are you most excited to see happen in financial services in the next 10 years or so, in the future, basically?
Wow. Yeah, 10 years. Like, if you ask someone like me about 10 years, it's like, whoa, that's a long time. But yeah, that's good though, because loads can happen. So I think I am still really excited about open banking. I think for financial planners, especially open finance, which moves from, bank accounts being more passportable to investment accounts, pensions and assets. For your world and financial planning, that really is going to be huge. Again, technology companies need to solve the problems to make it more accessible, but it'll make a big difference. And I think bring a whole new group of people into financial planning, both to work in that industry, but also to put their money in smaller amounts and get advice and get the right returns. I am excited about crypto and decentralized finance, not because I think it's an interesting investment kind of opportunity or anything like that. It's actually some of the, and I'm not really an expert in it, but some of the, I think, principles behind it in terms of connecting new economies beyond physical borders, improving financial inclusion, which we've talked a bit about today, kind of social mobility. I think executed right, the technology is really interesting for what that could enable. So that does excite me. And then from a startup perspective, I'm really excited. There's sort of a lot of entrepreneurs in the financial services space looking to take existing technology and products, but sort of package them together to really work for quite niche communities. So people like a lot of people are talking about the creator economy, but building sort of banking services for creators who don't have assets but have lots of influence and followers and have digital wealth but not physical wealth, and then gig workers, immigrants, sort of back to making financial services fair. People that are starting to put things together, thinking about particular groups of people. I get really excited about that.
I think it's the first time we've had 3 things that they're excited about. Is good. So
10 years.
Very good. A lot can happen in 10, especially when you're as kind of motivated, I'm going to say, as you are, which is like, just do it and just get it done and let's do it. A lot can happen in 10 years. Okay, cool. So last question for you then. We always like to ask our guests for a book that has helped them in their career so far. I don't limit it to books. It can be anything really. It can be films, podcasts, whatever it is. Just something that has helped them change their mindset in a way. I'm assuming that you've got some good ones. So what have you got for us?
So one book I did read, and we talked earlier about we're not allowed to swear on the podcast, or we are sometimes, but there's a book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a insert expletive at the end, which someone kindly gave to me. I've not really read it. it is a self-help book. I've not really read books like that before, but I have to say, when I was kind of sort of CEO of my previous business and struggling and going through some difficult, challenging times with the business, it really did help. Effectively, without spoiling it, the kind of synopsis, if you like, is you should put your energy and passion into getting upset about things you actually care about and not get upset about things that don't matter. And actually, financial planners could be quite interesting because a lot of it was thinking about the future and your future self and thinking, well, why am I getting upset about this kind of minutial issue over here that isn't to do with me sitting in Italy, having a nice cocktail or glass of wine? Like, that's what I care about. If I'm having an argument, a dispute, or getting stressed about something that isn't contributing to that, then it doesn't matter. And that was really, really helpful for gaining perspective. And again, kind of a simple concept, but the book's good because it's got lots of good examples about how you can kind of hold yourself accountable to, again, just basically not getting too excited about something that isn't what you actually care about.
Yeah. Very good. First time we've had that book on the podcast as well, which is
it's a good one.
anyways, which is good because I like to have some different books and stuff. So that's really good. Well, that is all we've got time for today. We've been chatting for nearly an hour about entrepreneurial stuff, so I'm absolutely shattered, obviously. No, I'm joking. But that's all from us for today. But what we like to do on the podcast is give the last word to our guest to say thank you for coming on. So can you tell our audience where to find you, where to connect with you, and if you fancy, if you're really up for this, leave us with a bit of motivation at the end as well. But you don't have to do that. But yeah, take it away.
That's quite the platform. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. You can find me, Olly Betts, on Twitter, LinkedIn. Go and check out Founders Factory as well. We do loads of great stuff for all founders from, and we do a lot of work with diverse founders as well, which is really exciting. We put a lot of time into that. Go and check us out there. What could I motivate people with? I think it's the go and do an experiment or launch a business, but with no money and as a side hustle. And what's the smallest experiment you can run, and just go and do it, see what happens. I think that's the biggest motivation. That is was the biggest motivation for me when coaches or anyone else were talking to me, which is do it faster, do it simpler, quicker, just go and do it.
Awesome. That's the best way to finish that podcast. With just do it. Just go and do it. That's awesome.
No disputes from Nike, please. I don't want any lawyers on me. So.
Yeah, we should probably put a trademark logo in there. So thank you very much, Olly. That was a fantastic podcast. So that was Olly Betts from Founders Factory. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our website to share with your friends and colleagues. And also on our website, you'll find more information about the Next Gen Planners training contract, the Future Leaders program, the Blast Off program, our new product Advice Stack, the conference which is coming up later this year, and of course about joining our awesome community of financial service heroes. It's at nextgenplanners.co.uk, and you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram as well, so you can share it on there. But again, thank you, Olly, for joining us on the podcast. Thank you guys at home for listening, as always, and we'll see you in the next one.